Hi guys, Geoffrey here. In this video, I want to show you how you can rebuild trust in a long-term relationship, especially when you've done something really bad to destroy it, or if you've been destroying it for a long period of time and you don't know how to get it back. And this might be a longer video than most guys, but I want to make this a one-stop shop for you in terms of rebuilding trust. I've made a video on this before on rebuilding trust, but I want to double down on that video and make a more complete video for you so you can understand why this trust was destroyed in the first place and what you can do to recreate it. And in case you're new to the channel, guys, my name is Geoffrey and I help men in long-term relationships or in marriages with the right skills and knowledge to be able to design a thriving relationship on your own. So if you want more content on this topic, be sure to subscribe to this channel and also click the bell button as well to be notified when I post new videos every single week. And before we begin this video too, I also want to let you know that the masterclass and the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up is still open, guys. So if you want to learn more about the processes here, if you want to dive deeper into any of these things, or if you want to submit your application for the Relationships Revival program, then be sure to stick around to the very end of this video for an announcement that you can join both those things. Now to start this off, guys, we need to understand first why and how the trust was destroyed in the relationship in the first place. Now I want to begin this by just stating the obvious. The obvious is that you destroy trust when your actions no longer fit the words that you're saying. So there's a lack of integrity here. And we all know this. But the reason why we destroy trust in our relationship is not because we don't know this concept, but we often destroy the integrity unknowingly, in a very subconscious way. And that's what I want to dive into, is the 5 subconscious ways that we destroy trust in a relationship. And that brings me to my first not so obvious reason, is that we know what we need to do to create trust, but often we cannot help but just do the things that actually destroys trust. And a classic example of this is with emotions, for example, with anger, with your emotionality. And we made a video on what it means to become bulletproof in your relationship, for example. And a lot of people, what they do is they try to become bulletproof by using their willpower to become bulletproof. In a way, they're trying to basically clench their asshole to try to keep the crap in. But if you're using what we call the surviving approach like this, then there's going to be a moment when you can no longer hold it together. Now, after you lose your emotions, you would then regret it. You would then promise to your partner, for example, I'll do better next time. But then the next time comes and you cannot do better again. You lose your emotions again. And it's this cycle of trying to do better, not doing better, regretting it, that a lot of men fall into. So in this instance, your intention to want to do better is there, but somehow there's some blocker to why you cannot follow through on what you promised. And in the same way, when you see someone, for example, who they always make promises to try to do better, but when it comes to the actual time that they need to do better, they can't seem to follow through. If you see someone who's all words, no action like this, then of course that will destroy trust. And so later on in the video, we'll show you what is causing this phenomenon of you having good intentions, you wanting to change, you wanting to do better, but somehow when the moment comes, you cannot do better. We'll talk about that in a bit, but that's the first reason. It's a not so obvious reason, is that we all know what we need to do to create trust, but we often cannot follow through on that. And the second not so obvious way that we destroy trust, guys, is that we don't often destroy trust just by one thing that we do. So for example, one betrayal, etc. But we often destroy trust by showing a pattern of something, a pattern of a behavior. And so it's not about the circumstance, which is that you did this and that destroyed trust, but it's often a full context, a string of circumstances that causes the destruction of trust. And this is the part that a lot of people tend to miss, is that when their partner finally tells them, for example, I don't trust you for whatever you did, whether you cheated on her, whether you did not follow through on your promises, etc., they think that it's this one thing that they did that causes destruction of trust, but it's actually a string of things. And if you took the time to actually investigate what that string of things are, you'll find that it's a full context of things that destroy trust and not just the one thing. And the third thing you need to know is that what destroys trust is not just what you did, but often the subsequent denial of what you did. So let's think about an instance when someone did something to hurt you, for example. And when you bring it up to them, all they do is deny it, they justify it, they get defensive. What would you feel? So not only did the bad behavior itself kind of destroy trust for you, but when they deny that activity, when they deny their wrongdoing, that's when your trust really plummets. If, let's say, they did something wrong and that person really admits that mistake and does something to better themselves to prevent it in the future, does that destroy trust? I don't think so. So it's not the act itself that destroys trust, but it's really the subsequent denial of it that destroys trust. And along with the last point, guys, number 4 is when you try to justify your wrongdoings. That destroys trust like nothing else. So not only that you did something wrong, but you're in denial of it, you are unaware that you did something bad, but then you go the next step of actually justifying explaining and giving yourself excuses for why you did that wrong thing. If that's the case, then it makes your partner feel just like how it would make you feel. Like if you don't even understand or see your wrongdoings here, if you are in denial of it, if you are justifying it, if you're explaining yourself, then how can I trust you? And the fifth way that we destroy trust is when we are doing the wrong things at the key moments, guys. So let's say here that you have a history of anger issues, and now your partner doesn't trust that you can actually manage your emotions, control your emotions, or you have a bad history, for example, of being very selfish whenever things are hard, things get difficult. So you could promise to your partner right now, for example, hey, I'm going to do better on this. And you could be having a streak of 3 weeks when you did everything correctly, when you didn't lose your emotions. But those 3 weeks were 3 easy weeks. No problems really happened. Nothing really happened. But then let's say after the 3 weeks, there's one moment when things hit the fan a bit. Things become difficult. Things become challenging. You're presented with a difficult challenge. And that's the moment when you lose all your emotional regulation. Can your partner trust you then? The same way, let's say you have lost trust from someone. They keep, let's say, losing their emotions at the most opportune times. And 3 weeks are great, but then the one moment when you need them to actually regulate their emotions, they lose their emotions again. Can you trust that person? Usually no. So that's why we often say, guys, it's not about the 99 things you do right, but it's the one thing you do wrong during the key moments that really, really count. And we talked about this quite extensively in many of our videos on the paradox of change. So if you want to view that video, click the link up in my head or so down below this video to watch that video and understand the importance of understanding how to do the right things at the opportune moments as well to create trust. So once we understand that, the next question we have to ask is, then why do we make the same mistakes, the same 5 mistakes over and over again? Why can't we help ourselves but make those same mistakes even though we know we shouldn't be making those mistakes? And the first reason why is that a lot of men, they don't know how to communicate in an emotional way. They can only communicate in a very logical way. So let's say your partner comes to you with a misunderstanding. Maybe she misunderstood the intentions of why you did something, one of your actions. And instantly what a lot of men do is they respond in one of these 3 ways. You can respond in a very active way, which is when you're trying to use emotions to try to clarify the misunderstanding by getting angry back at her, for example. Being upset that, why do you even misunderstand me, etc. You can respond to it in a passive way, where you say, for example, you know what? If you're going to be that irrational, if you're going to make bad assumptions about me, then I'm just not going to talk to you. I'm just going to forget it. You can do the stoic way, where you try to justify yourself, explain yourself in a very logical way to show your partner, hey, let me tell you why this is a misunderstanding. Now, logically, doing this might sound right, but emotionally, what it tells her is that you have no interest in trying to understand her. You have no interest in trying to go deeper into why she made the misunderstanding in the first place. You have no interest in investigating all the patterns of behavior in the past that you have done of the relationship of her life, for example, to lead her to that conclusion, for example. And it also emotionally suggests that you don't see a problem with what you're doing. And if you don't see a problem with what you're doing, then there's no plans to change as well. So nothing will get better. And so when you do this, when you tend to speak in a very logical way like this, when you tend to communicate in a logical way like this, it's very difficult to build emotional trust with someone if you're in this state. So let's say here you destroy trust with your emotional outburst. And so let's say you're also trying to establish trust and showing your partner that, hey, I'll do better next time. Maybe you angrily tell her, I'll do better next time. That doesn't really create any trust whatsoever. Doesn't also create trust when you play the stoic route, when you try to explain yourself and try to justify and make promises of why you'll do better in the future, because most likely you've done that in the past, but you cannot follow through with the actions here, which is why it's really gone to the point for her where she feels like something needs to happen now. And if your partner feels triggered by your anger, for example, that should be telltale signs that it wasn't just you being angry one time, it was the string of anger, your angry behavior that caused the destruction of trust here. So whatever thing you say, whatever logical thing you say is not going to cut it anymore. She wants to see some actions. And reason number 2 is that most men have a very vague understanding of what it means to actually do better. So a lot of men are very quick to just say, I'll do better. So let's say, again, the problem is that she doesn't trust your emotional regulation and you keep promising her, I'll do better. But you don't really understand what it actually means to do better. Your idea of doing better is to simply use your willpower to do better. And if you have a very vague idea, vague process, vague principles of what it means to do better, you can promise all day long that you do better, but you'll keep staying in the same cycle where you promise something, you promise to do better, you make a mistake, you feel guilty, you promise again. And I'm sure many of you men watching this video have felt what it's like to be in this cycle. And number 3, why a lot of men cannot help but make mistakes here is that most men focus on the what, but never the how of doing something. So the truth is that a lot of people's research on the topic of, let's say, emotions management, untethering, and the principles of what it means to create a good relationship, they're very surface level. They're very tactical. They just look for, hey, tell me what to do, tell me what to say, but they don't really dive deeper into the how of it, the principles behind it. So I get a lot of comments, for example, from people who ask me questions like, okay, if my partner says this, what should I say to her back? And these are people who are looking for tactics. But the best response that I can give to instances like this is by saying, if you have the right process, then you will thrive under any what. If you have the right how, you will thrive under any what. If you have the wrong how, if you don't know how to do the thing properly, you will struggle under any what. And here's what I mean by that. So let's say you ask the question, hey Jeff, should I say to my partner that I'm trying to do better? Should I ask this question to my partner? Should I listen to her and discover more? Well, yes, the what is the obvious part. But if you don't know how to listen, if you don't know how to communicate that, if you don't know how to have the right microtones, micro-expressions, the right words to display that, then no matter what you do, you will still fail. Because fundamentally, the reason why you're failing is that you have the wrong how. But if you have the right how, just like with Michael Wen, for example, Eve, if you watch my 2 interviews there, once they understand the right how, they can realize that it doesn't matter what I do, I will do it all in the correct ways anyway. So the real question is never the what, but the how. And if we're just focused on the what of what can I do to create trust and what can I do to stop destroying trust, you're kind of missing the whole point. Because if you have the wrong how, it doesn't matter what you do to create trust or not, you will never create trust. Especially, for example, if you fall for the paradox of logic, then you can do whatever you want, but you cannot really create trust. And mistake number 4 here, guys, is forcing your changes using willpower and not really becoming the change. And so if your problem, for example, is emotions regulation, most men, what they do is they try to use their willpower to just basically will their way into keeping in their emotions. But again, like we said, if you do this, then eventually you're going to explode. You're going to make that mistake. Instead, what we have our clients do is to first understand what are the principles behind emotions regulation. So we know, for example, that it's not the event itself that causes the emotion, but it's our interpretation of it. And our interpretation here is fueled by the way we look at the world, our paradigms. And so if you want to change your emotions, we shouldn't change the event, we shouldn't use our willpower, we should change the reflexive interpretations that we have by changing the reflexive paradigms that we have in our heads. And once we identify what these reflexive interpretations are, we need to then find a process, a mechanism by which we can program these new paradigms, these new interpretations, so that the next time something happens, we can reflexively react to it in a proper way. And a great example of this is if you watch a lot of my interviews with my clients, the way they see resistance, the way they see their partner bringing up issues is very different. Most men would see that as a threat. My clients learn to see that with the right paradigms as an opportunity. And so the next time your partner brings up a misunderstanding, your initial instinct is to actually respond well to it, not respond badly to it with the active, stoic, or passive approach. And number 5 is most men are not able to go from conceptual understanding to experiential understanding, to emotional understanding. And so you might understand a lot of the right principles of relationships, for example. You're supposed to speak in this way, say this, say that, but I don't think you understand how to experience it. The same way you can conceptually understand how to start a business. You can conceptually understand how to play basketball. But conceptually understanding how to play basketball or start a business and actually starting a business, those are 2 very different things. From logical knowing to experiential knowing, there's a big gap. It's a big gap of understanding the little nuances, the feeling, the sensations of actually being there. And if you just reach a point where you can know things conceptually, then you can get things right sometimes. But you cannot get things right all the time. So again, it's that quote again. Masters practice something until they cannot get it wrong. Amateurs practice something until they can get it right. Look at the difference there. Very crucial difference, guys. Now let's talk about how to actually create trust then. There's 2 principles you need to understand here. The first principle is what we call the falling versus striving outcomes. So again, we discussed in the previous video how we talked about how in some things in life, it's striving outcomes. Like you running faster, for example, you lifting something heavy physically. Striving outcomes are something that you can use your willpower. The more willpower you use, the more you can accomplish that goal. But there's a whole other category of outcomes called falling outcomes. Think, for example, like falling asleep. The more you try to fall asleep, the more willpower you exert in trying to fall asleep, the less you can sleep. So the problem again is when people try to achieve falling outcomes by using striving tactics, striving strategies. And trust, guys, is an act of falling. That's why people do the trust fall. When you want to trust someone, it's a falling sensation. So this is why we say you cannot use logic to build trust. And you cannot force your way to building trust. And if you look at all the 5 mistakes that we said earlier, all those things are involve you trying, forcing, using the striving approach to try to create trust, which will never work. It will always backfire on you. And the second principle you need to understand here is the principle of what it means to surrender to trust, to fall into trust as well. So if you look at in life, there's always two decisions that you make. Decisions with surrender and decisions without surrender. What were the key ingredients that you got to be able to surrender to the decision? It's always the same four. Number one is that you have to have plenty of evidence to support why the decision is a good one. Number two is you have to have the absence of counter evidence of why the decision is a good one. And number three is you need to have sense of agency, the agency to be able to make decisions on your own. And number four is you need time. So if you look at these ingredients, for example, imagine you're trying to apply for a job or trying to choose a partner. Sure, you may be getting all this evidence, number one, of evidence to support why choosing that job is the right one. But let's say you start to see all this counter evidence to why it's the wrong job, why it's the wrong decision. Can you really surrender to it? Can you really fall into and surrender to that decision? Probably not. But let's say you don't see any problems with this. You have 1 and 2, but you don't have 3, which is that you feel forced to make a decision. You don't feel like you're making your own decision. You didn't have time to explore other alternatives. Can you surrender to it? Probably not. It's going to be very hard. Now let's say you have all 3 now, but you missed the 4th one, which is time. Let's say you feel rushed into making a decision. Can you fully surrender to the decision? Usually not. It's a blocker to it. So you need all 4 ingredients here to allow your partner to fall into trust with you. If you want to create trust, you need to feed all these 4 ingredients. So if you want to create trust, guys, there's really 5 sequential steps that you need to master here. First is you need to understand what genuine acknowledgement actually means. Being able to genuinely acknowledge and really acknowledge where you are, your shortcomings, your flaws, that's the first key step to building trust. Because again, if you cannot even acknowledge what you've done wrong, then forget about you actually recognizing the problem and forget about being better. The first step is to adopt the mindset of how do I actually genuinely acknowledge my situation right now? And guys, this act of acknowledgement can seem very simple at the surface, but it's actually very, very hard in practice. And I made a video about this, about how a lot of men, their vision of the perfect product, of being and needing to be the perfect product, really makes it difficult for them to actually look within and actually acknowledge their own shortcomings. And we actually, whenever we have new clients coming in, we have a lot of calls with people who struggle with this concept of being in denial, being stubborn. And like we said, if you're in denial of the problems, that is the number one thing that will destroy trust. So do not fall for that, guys. So if you want to learn more about this, the subconscious ways that we deny our own shortcomings, check out the video I have for you above my head here. Number 2 is you need to understand how to find root diagnosis and a new way of thinking to be able to find that root diagnosis. And in our program, we stress very highly on what we call systems and principles thinking so that you can really dive deeper into understanding what is the root cause of your problems from there. In our program, for example, we have the layers of the 5 pillars, and we have also the layers of internal shifts. And so with that, with the understanding of that system, we can then understand, okay, if my partner is very wishy-washy, we have no sexual passion, for example, is that because of the lack of goal alignment, the lack of admiration, the lack of safety, which safety is lacking, and why do we lack safety? Is it because we're not bulletproof? Is it because we're still tethered? Is it because we have some self-esteem issues, etc., etc.? So you can really break down the problems to the root problems. And once you find the root problems, then we need to find a really viable, specific solution and process to fix those problems. In our program, for example, we have a specific process by which we take someone from being tethered to being untethered. We have a specific process by which we grow someone's self-esteem. We identity shift. We grow their bulletproof vest. We grow their mastery of the frameworks. We create safety, admiration, etc. You need to have a very specific process that you can do daily to be able to do that. And once you find the root process, guys, the goal is to practice these things until you cannot get it wrong. So again, don't practice something until you can get it right, but practice something until you can't get it wrong, guys. And again, remember, guys, trust is destroyed or created in the moments when it matters. So you need to be a performer here, because it doesn't matter if you can do things right 99% of the time. It's that 1% where it's very difficult for you to fake your changes, where she makes it very hard for you, when life makes it very hard for you. When you slip up then, that's when that will really count in destroying trust. And so the only way you can fix that, you can remedy that, is if you become a performer. When you practice something until you can't get it wrong anymore. So if you want to hear one of my clients talk about this and the importance of this, click the link above my head as well, or check out the link underneath this video. And number 5, guys, is just to let your consistency speak for itself. Once you can deepen the changes into your identity level so that it becomes your lowest default until you can't get it wrong, then it's just a matter of time before your partner will regain that trust for you again. So if you look at these 5 solutions, guys, you'll realize that this goes very differently than how most people would tell you to build trust. We're not telling you what to say here. We're not telling you tactics and what to do to your partner to rebuild that trust. Because we cannot, like we said, we cannot strive to build trust. We have to allow your partner to fall into trust. And the only way we can make her fall into that trust is if we follow the 4 ingredients. And the only way we can follow these 4 ingredients here is if we follow the right internal processes to actually become a performer, and the right kind of performer, master the right process. And to do that, we need to acknowledge, we need to find the right diagnosis, find the right process, and we need to master it until we become a performer. And we need to let time allow your partner to go from logical understanding of your changes to emotional understanding of your changes. And that's the mechanics of how trust is created and how you allow your partner to fall into that trust. If you want to go deeper into this process, then I encourage you to check out my masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. In the masterclass, I'll show you the exact process in detail with the right process, the right principles, so that you know exactly where to go from here to rebuild that trust. If you want to join me in that masterclass, click the link up in my head also down below this video, and I will teach you all the processes that all my clients have used to take them from the brink of a divorce to a point of 0 trust to the point where they have really, really high trust. And if you want to see just how powerful these principles can become in rebuilding that trust, feel free to look at all my client stories here to see just how this actually plays out in real life. But for now, guys, I'll leave you just 2 other videos with more skills and knowledge to be able to design a thriving relationship on your own. For now, I'll see you in the next video.